students. Welcome again to my another new lecture. I am Mohammad Tanbir Ahmed, lecturer, Department of Civil Engineering, World University of Bangladesh. Outline of the lecture. In this lecture, we will discuss about the composting. That means the potential of solid waste to use as compost and basic composting process, and also sanitary landfill with solid waste materials. Composting. Composting is possible only for organic solid waste, and to convert solid waste into compost, first we need to sort out the organic solid waste, then store them for bacterial conversion to turn into compost, which can be handled, stored and transported without any adverse environmental effect. The compost can be used as organic manure for improvement of soil quality and fertility. Characteristics of compost. Compost is a humus-like product and it is very good soil conditioner, which supplies nutrients to soil. The main function of compost is to make soil fertile and also increase its production. That means to produce more crops from the same soil by applying fertilizer. The application of compost to agricultural land brings significant favorable changes in soil properties. Some of the important changes are increased organic contents of soils. As we know, compost is the organic contents of solid wastes, and it can easily increase the organic contents of soil, and which makes the soil more fertile. Compost can also increase moisture retention capacity of soil. It also improves aeration at root zone, which helps to supply more oxygen into the root zone of the crops and to increase the production of the crops. It also improves soil textures, soil fertility, and also replenishes micronutrients in soil. Factors affecting composting. Composting is basically a biological process and depends on several factors. Some of these factors are mentioned below. First one, the waste material subject to composting must be biodegradable. As the biodegradable material can be converted into organic matter, which increases soil fertility, so only biodegradable material is essential to use to convert it into compost. For example, food waste is biodegradable and can be used as compost material, used in composting, but wood is not biodegradable, and so we will not use wood for compost. Suitable numbers and types of microorganisms must be present. As the number of microorganisms increases, it increases the organic conversion of solid waste and also replenishes the lack of minerals present in soils. The rate and efficiency of composting are dependent on the activity of microorganisms. As stated earlier, if microorganisms or number of microorganisms are more, the solid waste will convert as compost material earlier, and it will increase the fertility of soils because more microorganisms can replenish the lack of soils quickly. Similarly, environmental factors like pH, temperature, and presence of oxygen control the processes. That means these three items controls the processes of composting. As we know, temperature increases the rate of conversion of solid waste into composting. So with the increasing temperature, the rate of conversion will be increases and vice versa. Similarly, we know oxygen increases the rate of bacterial conversion. So, the presence of oxygen also increases the bacterial conversion or also increases the production of composting. And the compost must have a controlled pH value so that after application of the compost into soil, it does not make the soil as acid or alkaline, which will decrease the production of the soil. Then the waste must be nutritionally balanced. If some minerals is lacked on the compost, then it cannot fulfill or replenishes the lack of minerals of the soil and cannot act as a good compost. Then the presence of toxic substances has adverse effects on the process. That means if the solid waste have toxic substances, it will have the adverse effects of on process. That means that compost will not act as good for production of the good for soil and will decreases the production. And this is the flow diagram of basic composting process. First, we need to collect organic solid waste for converting it into compost. Then these salvageable materials are sent for screening or sorting purpose. During screening, non-compostable materials such as the materials which are not biodegradable removed from the materials, and the rest materials, that means which are organic materials, shredded or pulverized. After shredding or pulverizing, water adds with the shredded solid waste to adjust the moisture content and keep it for aerobic composting with the help of air. During aerobic composting, excess carbon dioxide, air and ammonia removed from the solid waste. Then after the completion of aerobic composting, when the waste is maturing, it is then processing or bagging for sellable compost. That means during aerobic after the composting process, the solid waste is ready for packaging and it is then sold to the consumers for application of land. Composting in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, composting has not been considered on a large scale, and small scale production is continuing in some parts of the country. In Rajshahi, human waste is mixed with garbage and is processed to convert it into compost. Recently, a small NGO named Waste Concerned has established it at Mirpur in Dhaka, where solid waste is collected from selected households and are aerobically converted it into compost. The major consideration for composting of solid wastes in Bangladesh are availability and suitability of wastes. In early we have said that compost should have the sufficient microorganisms, and to convert a solid waste into compost, such types of solid waste should have to be available. Socio-economic conditions. If the economy of the society is well developed, people will not generally use these types of solid waste or use this type of compost into their land. The third one is technological access. If technology is not available to produce this type of compost, it will not be possible to convert the solid waste into compost. Marketing of compost. The converted compost should have sufficient marketplace to sell. Affordable prices for farmers. If the compost or the price of the compost is higher, farmer will be discouraged to use those compost in their land. Environmental legislation and enforcement. Finally, present disposal cost. If the cost of present disposal is lower than the cost to convert the solid waste into compost, people will discourage to convert their solid waste into compost. Then sanitary landfill. Sanitary landfill means the filling of land with sanitary waste, that means the filling of land with solid waste materials. If we read, we can see sanitary landfill may be defined as the operation in which wastes to be disposed of are compacted in layers and covered with a layer of earth at the end of each day's operation. When the landfill site has reached its ultimate capacity, a thick final layer of cover material needs to be applied over it. Landfill site selection. To select the landfill site, we have to consider the following factors. First one, it is important to ensure that sufficient land area is available for disposal of solid waste for a reasonable period of time, preferably greater than 1 year. Wall distance should be minimum from the disposal site to the uh, location of containers. Although wall distance depends on local traffic patterns, route locations, etc. It is important that the cover material should be available at or near the landfill site. Therefore, the soil conditions and topography of the site must be considered. Climatic conditions, for example, wind patterns, local surface water hydrology should be considered so that the landfill site can be accessed all around the year. Extreme care should be taken in the operation of landfill so that it is environmentally acceptable with respect to noise, odor, dust, vector control. That means it should not spread noise, odor, and also should not spread any vector-borne disease. That means should not spread any microorganisms that are responsible for vector-borne disease. Especially flying papers and plastics must also be controlled, which is very much objectionable to the locality. And that is the end of our today's lecture. Thank you everyone.